In this special broadcast now, I'm joined from Kyiv, where the war zone is in Ukraine. GauravCSawant, our senior executive editor. Gaurav, the next half an hour, over to you.
Pooja, many thanks. Hello and welcome to an India Today special broadcast from Kyiv, Ukraine. I'm GauravCSawant. It's day 34 of the conflict, and the big story actually comes from Istanbul, where there were negotiations between Russia and Ukraine, and the chief negotiator from the Russian side, Vladimir Medinsky, he's made a major statement. He said that Russia is willing to reduce hostilities in Chernihiv and in Kyiv, and there could well be a possibility that presidents of Ukraine and Russia will have a summit. But for that, there will have to be certain conditions that have to be met and certain agreements between the foreign ministers of the two countries. That's the information that we're getting at this point of time. It's being seen as a massive breakthrough in Russia-Ukraine peace talks in Istanbul. Russia has agreed to reduce hostilities and its military activities both in Kyiv and in Chernihiv. Moscow's chief negotiator, Vladimir Medinsky, he said Russia is willing to de-escalate, and these are two-step de-escalation is what he's talking about. Medinsky says a Putin-Zelenskyy meet could be on the cards if, and that's the big if it's accompanied by an initialing of peace treaty by the foreign ministers of the two countries of Russia and Ukraine. And this is where this becomes very interesting. The devil will lie in the detail. What kind of peace treaty is Moscow talking about? India Today has the biggest team of reporters on ground. We have Geeta Mohan joining us from the Donbass region, from Donetsk on the Russian side. She traveled to the Independent Republic of Donetsk and is reporting from there. We have Rajesh Pawar joining us from Kyiv. We'll also be in a moment joined by an expert, Kuldeep Kumar, a resident of Kyiv, in touch with the government and the armed forces of Ukraine constantly. But Geeta, I want to come to you first. Geeta, what more can you tell us? Russia's chief negotiator says, okay, in a moment, I will be joined by Geeta and Rajesh, but this is extremely critical, the fact that there is a conversation about peace and negotiations. Now, what is the road to peace? Russia, after 34 days, has achieved certain objectives. Its main objective initially was change of guard, change of regime in Kiev. Russia wanted to remove President Zelenskyy. It also talked about the denazification or demilitarizing Ukraine completely. It hasn't achieved either of those aims 34 days into this conflict. But Russia is in control virtually of the entire Donbass region. On the 24th of February, Russia was in control of about 30% of Donetsk and Luhansk. 34 days later, it controls about 90% of the Donbass region. Russia also was in control of Kherson, a very crucial seaport access route. Now, Russia from Mariupol has cut off the Sea of Azov. Russian Black Sea fleet has cut off Ukraine's access to the Black Sea, so much so that Ukraine is not getting any of its supplies from the sea route anymore. Will Russia be satisfied with achieving this military objective, and will Ukraine be happy with Russia controlling the Donbass region and Kherson and Mariupol? Now, these are very critical points. So far, before negotiations, Ukraine has constantly claimed Ukraine wants Russia to move back to the pre-February 24th position. Russia clearly, after having lost so many men, aircraft and other warlike material in this area, will Russia be satisfied doing so? And that's where the devil would clearly lie in the detail. In a moment from now, we will be joined by Geeta Mohan and Rajesh Pawar. But before they join me on the broadcast, I want to cut across to India Today's executive editor, ShivAroor, for more on the story. Shiv, the devil would lie in the detail as far as this peace, this so-called negotiation and road to peace is concerned.
Gaurav, and that skepticism will not be misplaced, because remember, you're talking about a country that has been bombed and devastated for 34 days non-stop. Even while you and I are interacting here, that devastation is continuing in vast parts of Ukraine right now. Even if you look at the small little details of what Russia has declared after these peace talks, the skepticism comes from within. They've they've promised to reduce hostilities in two cities, Kyiv and Chernihiv, the capital city, and Chernihiv, which is north of Kyiv, very close to the Russian border. But the bombings they haven't said anything about stopping hostilities in places like Mariupol, in Kharkiv, in Kherson, in Odessa, in Mykolaiv, in Zhytomyr, all of these other places which are still being bombed, into oblivion. How does this figure as a ceasefire in any stretch of imagination? Number two, they're saying that a face-to-face meeting between the two sides is possible. That again will trigger a lot of skepticism, because this comes at a time when Putin is saying, "I will thrash them." A lot of contempt has been shown, for any proposal of a Putin-Zelenskyy summit so far. So why this sudden change of heart? The previous times when temporary ceasefires have been announced to facilitate humanitarian corridors in Ukraine, Ukraine has consistently said that these ceasefires have not been adhered to by the Russian side. So the skepticism by Ukraine right now will be extremely easy to understand. Also remember the fact, as Rajesh pointed out earlier, Gaurav, that the peace conditions that Zelensky himself have put forward are a bit of a bitter pill to swallow by many sections within Ukraine. We're hearing even within the government there may be some dissent on the things that have been promised by Ukraine, like sovereign neutrality, putting NATO membership on the back burner, and things like that. So, as always on India Today, we are not going to jump the gun. Big chunk of reality check coming up as far as this peace deal is concerned.
In fact, Shiv, you've been speaking to a number of members of Parliament of Ukraine. You've been speaking to a number of soldiers. When I speak to them, they seem to indicate that they would rather have this decided either ways. Yes, they want peace, but not at the cost of losing, one, their self-respect, and two, territory. As of now, they seem to have lost a large amount of both. They've lost the Donbass region, they've lost Kherson. Russian forces have cut off their access to the sea. And peace at this cost would perhaps be either expensive or virtually suicidal for President Zelensky.
It's politically suicidal, and it's also a bit of an insult, isn't it, Gaurav? Ukraine is a country that has a great deal of, they wear their nationalism on their sleeve. For a country that has, lost thousands of lives in 34 days, vast swaths of territory that have been taken over, by the invading forces, especially in the eastern parts of the country, completely encircling that eastern part. And we have that map as well. Offering to reduce hostilities in two cities, is a bit of an insult, and it should be looked at in the perspective of what Russia has achieved so far, the damage that has been done so far, the stomach that Russia has for an expanded operation, and then juxtapose that with them offering to reduce hostilities in just two cities. Are they trying to test the waters? Is the Kremlin feeling its way in the dark for some kind of, dignified way to de-escalate things because their objectives have not been met on the timelines that they had set out to achieve them? All of these variables are currently on the chessboard right now. And I think President Zelensky is going to be under a huge amount of pressure, because all the noises that he's been making from Kyiv suggests that he wants to make a peace deal. His hostility, the animosity in his words have drastically reduced over the last few days, as you've seen, Gaurav, because you're right there in Kyiv. You can hear it much more clearer than we can all the way here in India. And that's the reason why I think the Ukrainians are going to weigh this very carefully before probably rejecting it.
Shiv, stay with me for a moment. I also want to bring in our soldier reporter Rajesh Pawar joining me on the broadcast. Rajesh, how do you look at Moscow saying or indicating they're willing for a peace deal, but a lot will depend. A summit between President Zelensky and President Putin will depend on both the foreign ministers of the two countries actually initialing a peace deal. The devil clearly would lie in the detail, but what kind of a peace deal would be acceptable to Ukraine at a time when Russia controls the Donbass region?
Look, Gaurav, if you remember a few days back when the similar offer was made by Zelensky to have a summit meet with Putin, Zelensky said, the Russians said that Zelensky must do his homework before he's ready to meet Putin. What they actually meant was that he should understand the realities on ground, that Russia has taken control of large swaths of land in the eastern and south of Ukraine. They hold two important cities now, and they have almost achieved their military objective. Ukraine has been isolated. West is not giving the kind of help they had promised initially, and it is almost impossible to ship in large pieces of machinery or armament inside Ukraine from land borders. Both Russia and Ukraine understand this, and that is why they said Zelensky must do his homework before this. I am not really hopeful of anything much coming out of this summit in Istanbul for one basic reason, because Zelensky has said anything he does, any agreement he arrives at with Russia will be put to a public vote. And once the public says yes, it can be accepted, then only Ukraine will accept it. And that is not possible under the current circumstances. And that makes me believe that this meeting at Istanbul will not result in much. Gaurav.
Interesting, very interesting perspective. Rajesh, stay with me for a moment. Shiv with me. Let me also bring in Mr. Kuldeep Kumar, a prominent businessman here in Ukraine, in Kyiv. Kuldeep ji, जिस तरह की बातचीत इस समय हो रही है कि बातचीत के जरिए एक समाधान निकालने का प्रयास किया जा रहा है, क्या बातचीत से कोई सोल्यूशन निकलेगा?
मैं बिल्कुल नहीं समझता कि बातचीत से कोई सोल्यूशन निकलेगा।
क्यों?
ये बातचीत कितने टाइम से चल रही है, बातचीत से कोई सोल्यूशन नहीं निकलेगा। ये वॉर कंटिन्यू करेंगे। मैं प्रेसिडेंट पुतिन को अच्छी तरह से पिछले वक्त से जो मैं उनको सुन रहा हूं उनको जान गया हूं। ये ऐसा नहीं होगा। अगर ये दोनों प्रेसिडेंट का मिलने का जैसे फॉरेन मिनिस्टर के मिलने के बाद तय हो जाता है, 99% तो मिस्टर प्रेसिडेंट पुतिन मिलेंगे नहीं। अगर वो मिलते हैं, मुझे 1% चांस है तो शायद कोई सोल्यूशन निकले, लेकिन आने वाले 1-2 महीने में मुझे ऐसा कुछ नहीं लग रहा कि वॉर बंद होगा कि या उसका कोई सोल्यूशन निकलेगा।
हमसे बात करने के लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। Whether it's our soldier reporter Rajesh Pawar or Kuldeep Kumar here, the assessment remains the same. No solution, at least in these talks, because there is a big difference in what has been said and what's been done on ground. Even today, as we speak, there was a missile attack in Mykolaiv on a government building. So a lot of hostilities have been happening on ground. The road ahead, will it bring peace? We'll actually wait, read the fine print, because the devil lies in the detail. Except a couple of air raid sirens, by and large, Kyiv has been peaceful on day 34. However, Mykolaiv was hit by a series of missile strikes, one missile on a government building. There is reported loss of life and property, several fear trapped in the rubble. But it's not just Mariupol. It's not just Mykolaiv. Several areas in Ukraine have been targeted by Russian missile. In fact, for the first time in the past couple of days, Russia has also claimed to have used the Kinzhal, or the unstoppable dagger, the hypersonic missile, in this battle. On day 34, let's begin by getting you the day's top story.
This is what Ukraine looks like, as the raging war gives no breather for the devastated country. Major cities of Ukraine, including the port city of Mariupol, Lviv in the west, Kharkiv near the Russian border, continue to remain the most devastated. A massive explosion rocked the western Lviv region near the Polish border after multiple attacks by Russian forces. Residents of the city were seen running for their lives as smoke engulfed a neighborhood in the sprawling city, now facing a barrage of Russian strikes nearly every day. This was a heart-rending scene in Lursk city after intense shelling by Russian forces. Images capture the massive fire that erupted in Lursk. The rescue team in action could be seen struggling to extinguish this massive blaze. In the last 48 hours, Mariupol has been under relentless Russian attack, turning the city into a living hell. Lakhs are still trapped in the city, which is now mostly without power, food and medicine. Chilling images capture Russian forces firing on several buildings, leaving the port city on the Azov Sea coast ravaged and destroyed.
This is ruthless war against our nation, against our people, against our children. As of today, 143 children are known to have died.
Meanwhile, efforts are on to bring help to war-torn Kyiv with help from foreign volunteers.
What brings you to Kyiv?
I came to help the people of Ukraine in any way that I can and provide support with whatever my skill set can offer.
And that includes combat?
Eventually it does. For right now, I'm working solely in a humanitarian work. But eventually, yes, I do intend on joining a military group.
Right. Also with us is Captain Finney leading this group. Captain Finney, what kind of assistance are you providing?
So we are attached with the International Division of Foreign Volunteers who've come to fight for the freedom of Ukraine. We have ambulances, we have drones, and we provide the support to the recaptured villages from the enemy.
But Ukraine continues to fight back and protect its land. Ukrainian forces have seized back full control of the town of Irpin, a few kilometers from Kyiv, where India Today had reported during shelling a few weeks ago. The area's mayor said that Irpin had been liberated and that Russian soldiers were offering to surrender.
Today we have liberated Irpin. Now we are carrying out a mopping up operation. It's not possible to return to Irpin yet. It's not safe yet. We are consolidating at our new positions. We will next move to liberate Bucha, Hostomel, Vorzel. We understand that there will be more attacks on our city. We will defend it courageously. Irpin is Ukraine.
Today, we have good news. Our defenders are advancing in the Kyiv region, regaining control over Ukrainian territory. Irpin was liberated. Well done. I am grateful to everyone who worked for this result. The occupiers are being pushed away from Kyiv. However, it is too early to talk about secure situation in the parts of our region. The fighting continues.
In fact, Ukrainian forces in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions repulsed 7 enemy attacks in 24 hours, they say, destroying 12 tanks, 10 infantry fighting vehicles of the Russian army. The Russian army also has reportedly suffered losses in manpower. The damage clear on both sides.
On day 34 of the conflict, while there is relative peace here in Kyiv, there have been a series of missile strikes in the Mykolaiv region. In fact, a government building was targeted, reducing it to rubble and leading to loss of life and property. There have also been strikes in Mariupol, where a Russian tank was also targeted. A video has gone viral of a Russian tank being targeted by Javelin anti-tank guided missiles. The Azov battalion is said to be engaging the Russian forces in pitched battles street by street. In several other parts of Ukraine, there is apprehension of intensified missile strikes. Clearly, as peace talks continue in Turkey, the apprehension is the worst is yet to come. With cameraman Lalit Joshi in Kyiv, Ukraine, GauravCSawant for India Today.
Russian President Vladimir Putin's ally and Chechen President and warlord Ramzan Kadyrov has arrived in Mariupol, where Chechen fighters have been fighting for the Russians. Kadyrov, who is known to be a brutal tyrant, has been accused of several human rights violations. Who's the dreaded Chechen leader? Take a look at this report.
Time now for us to slip into a quick break, but there's lots more coming up on the other side of these messages, even as Ukrainian forces insist that they've been successful in pushing the Russians back in several areas on the outskirts of Kiev, especially in the Irpin-Bucha belt. Lots more coming up on the other side of a short break. Stay with us on this India Today special broadcast from Kyiv.